But he's able to makes it win anything. Sam, defend your team because they haven't won. Oh my God!
Strap yourselves in. It's another 1 hour episode.
Oh yeah.
Spike defused.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Press 4 to Defuse, your weekly spot for Valorant esports news and discussion. It's been a few weeks. We had a little mini hiatus. I mean, look, shows need hiatuses, right? You gotta have your season. Maybe we're in season 2 now. I mean, we're over a year of the show existing.
There you go.
Yeah, a dramatic pause of several weeks. But we are ready to get into the esports news, into the Valorant news. A lot of things have happened since we last had an episode. I'm Darth Mike. We've got Sam, the returning guest, and of course, Paul, returning host, I guess, and Paul, who is our returning guest, coming on the show for the second time. Paul, how are you doing today?
I'm fantastic. You know, we got a new agent. We got a ton of new roster movements. It's been a busy time in Valorant while we've been away here.
That it has. Sam, I understand you're fleeing your city for a couple of months. How are things going there?
Yeah, I'm heading to the hills. There are no actual human beings where I live. That's only slightly true. It's like one big giant retirement village, right? So I don't know a ton of people. So I'm heading on back to where I went to uni. I'm gonna go not drink. I'm gonna behave myself like a good person. But it's gonna be fun.
Don't know if I believe that last part, but we'll see about that. We are going to be headed into the news right now. We've got our first segment. We like to call it Run It Back, where we go over the news, and there has been a lot since we last had an episode. So we did have to cut it off somewhere, but we'll dive into some of the things that have happened. First up, Sentinels finally found a coach, and in the most Sentinels move ever, they signed someone to coach who has never coached before. Raucous, yes. Coming on in. They're like, what if we could add more firepower what if we could add another player to the roster? Does that work? Can we play 6 in the server? How can we make this happen, Riot? What do we make of this one, Sam?
I kind of love it, and I think that it's this real unsuspecting kind of dark horse move, because we kind of postulated about this a few weeks back when we were like, I think it was just after Masters, and we were like, Sentinel's got to get a coach, but who they're going to bring in? You know, Shazam is in control. He's not going to want to relinquish the reins to just anybody. He's still going to want to be in control a little bit. And we were kind of thinking, well, maybe he's going to try and poach a CS coach to get involved here. And so, yes, the Raucous signing, when I first saw it, I was like, what?
Yeah.
But it does kind of make sense. He's a player. He understands what it is to be a player. And I think, again, you know, with Shazam not wanting to really give up complete control of the team, this I feel is going to be more like an in tandem thing. So he'll still have like the main control over it, and then Raucous will bring in some other ideas that maybe he's spotting from an outside perspective. Theoretically, I think that this is actually a really, really good move, but not a lot of time to put that into practice. Obviously, they haven't been in any officials, and they won't be until Champions. So it's going to be a bit of a trial by fire for him.
Yeah, no kidding, right? I mean, and I personally think that even back in like Overwatch, Raucous was always more of a brainer than an aimer. So it's not surprising to see him move into a coach role by any stretch of the imagination. But yeah, Sam, you put it perfectly. I think it's definitely not going to be Raucous just taking in and coming in and taking the reins of Sentinels. It'll probably be him just throwing in some extra ideas, being that outside voice for like tack pauses and, strategy meetings and things like that.
Now, one of the things I found interesting in watching the discourse is I think there is some possibility that this is just through the end of the year for Raucous to sort of try it out, for Sentinels to have another set of eyes on hand for Champions, and that Raucous will try and compete as a player next year. I'm not 100% sure on that, and obviously that could change if you come in and win champs as a coach. Maybe you're like, hey, this coach is not so bad. Maybe I want to stick around. But it is interesting, right? And it's... Mm-hmm. I think I agree with you, Sam, where this almost feels like it's more about having a sounding board to talk things through for Shazam and to have another pair of eyes to go through demos and to point out things that might be missed, which is something that you obviously want from a coach, but it almost speaks to more of like an analyst role a little bit, and then you get a guy to hype you up on stage. That's where the coaching comes in. So I am curious to see how it's going to go. I am really curious, and I think the proof will be in the pudding, not just with how Sentinels do in champs, but also in whether the marriage stays beyond that, whether this is, a quick little fling, or whether Raucous might consider sticking around as the coach for a long time, and Sentinels might consider having him. It's an interesting move for sure. Yeah. It's a weird one. I also like the Photoshop where they've got him in the blazer and the jersey, and he's got the hair covering an eye. It's very anime character.
It's
very
fun.
Yeah, look at this.
Photoshop.
It's
right?
like, yeah. I mean, my question is,
though, right?
It is. I'm not.
It's dramatic. I love it.
Criticizing. I'm just wondering whether they did a photo shoot with the blazer and everything, or whether some poor sap had to just very carefully edit the lines on that to make sure it was in. Either way,
Surely
yeah, well done.
not.
Very, very anime character announcement with the hair and everything. I like it. There's a lot of coach news this week, so let's move on because there's a lot of coach news. 100 Thieves. Frost is out of 100 Thieves. This is a move that I think a lot of people saw coming back in, what was it, like March when he was yelling at admins?
God, that was funny.
At Josiah. Just like...
The thing is, though, he was advocating for his team, so it wasn't like he was just being dick. He was being a dick about it, but he wasn't just being a dick for the sake of being a dick. Like, there was purpose to it.
Purposeful dicking.
But the problem is, all right, so the problem is, it just left a bad taste in a lot of our mouths, especially those of us who actually know and interact with the admin team over at Nerd Street, you know, where it's like, hey, you're being a dick. Like, it's not this guy's, a lot of things. And then, of course, everyone started coming out of the woodwork with all their stories about all the times Ross has been a dick over the years. And it's like, he's been in esports for a while, so he's been a dick before. And his dirty laundry got aired in a big way. I just feel like the whole community's had a bit of a weird taste in their mouth for this guy since then, especially since he then got banned for a while by Riot because they were like, hey, screw you. And then there's the whole dispute thing where they aired the video where it was like, yeah, the video shows that you did what they said you did. Why are you showing us this? Like, what are you doing? Why are you trying to dispute this? You just basically made Riot's case for them. Yeah.
Sure. And I mean, even outside of all that, it's not surprising for 100 Thieves to want to make moves in their coaching department. I think they did pretty well this year. We're like technically what you can call them fourth place in NA, right? But 100 Thieves is a really big org. They're pumping a lot of money into that team, so they're looking to make a lot of moves before next year.
I mean, yeah, they want to be the top, right? They want to be the best team in North
Yeah,
America,
exactly.
and they're not, and they're not in a place to seriously beat. Like they're like maybe the third or fourth team that you'd consider for that argument, right? It's pretty tough to make a case that they're the best team in North America at this point. Whereas I feel
mean,
like
they
a
didn't
year
make
ago,
champions.
like
it's almost impossible.
yeah, but I feel like
Yeah,
a year
like-
ago that was the conversation where it was like, okay, they could be
Sure.
the next ones up after like first Striker Apt, and then we started to get into VCT. Everyone was waiting for that moment where it'd be like, oh, the experience is going to come to play. The veteran players are suddenly going to make them amazing, and it just never quite.
The boomer
Like they got
squad.
so close,
Yeah.
they got close, never quite worked.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, what do
Yeah.
you make of it, Sam?
I'm a bit worried for 100 Thieves overall because obviously there's a lot of rumors going around. One of them we're going to get into a little bit later. Now they've obviously lost their coach as well. And for a team who always seem to be on the cusp, this could kind of be catastrophic. It could also be exactly what they need to kind of fill those gaps with just the right pieces and then propel them forward that, those few steps extra that they need. But I don't know. I don't know if I see it. I feel like I need to see what comes next before I can really formulate an opinion, because right now it just feels like they're kind of falling apart a little bit. Off-season things, I mean.
Yeah, it is kind of a stripped-down rebuild, especially with leadership turnover. As we will talk about with some of the other rumors, it really does feel like a major changing the guard in that one. And that they might just be building a new structure. We'll move on for now. More coach news. This time for the Guard, a team that doesn't exist yet, but is starting to exist. Matt Elmore, MCE, our favorite guy ever here on the show. My favorent guy ever.
Yours.
In general.
Okay, mine
Wonderful
is Anders.
human
Thank
being.
you.
I will always beat the drum for MCE. Is going to be coaching the Guard. They also have signed Psalm, Net, and Valen, buying out Valen from Complexity to complete this. And it's quite an interesting project, right? We've got 3 pieces and a coach at this point. Based on the whispers I've heard behind the scenes, there is some serious do-re-mi coming out for this team as well. So I'm kind of curious to see who they're going to be able to get for those last 2 spots. Sam, any thoughts on the Guard?
Well, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but like the guy who owns the Guard seems to own sports.
Stan Kroenke.
All of sports, just everything. And for those who maybe come over from like an Overwatch or a Call of Duty, background or whatever, he was also part of the LA Gladiators, the LA Guerrillas, and now the Guard.
A lot of G names.
Yeah.
I get Guard though. Like, are we married to that?
Yeah.
Are we married to
so
Guard?
we were
though? Like,
we were
there are
talking
better
about
just
this.
like G nouns.
We were talking about this a little bit beforehand. The Guard, shit name. It evokes to me.
Yeah.
Cue the image. Show the image. This is what it evokes to me when you say the Guard. The Guard is like the guy in a windbreaker napping in a corner of your local community bank. So you're like,
Dude,
he's not going
if
to
only
stop
we had
anybody.
time to like Photoshop MCE's face onto that would have been golden. Somebody do that.
rude.
Somebody please
That's
do
just
that.
rude.
that'd
It's
be
just
great.
rude. I mean, it's very interesting. Wait, per George Geedy's reports, one of the last pieces is Seiya player from T1. Really? Did
That's
I miss that?
interesting.
That just came out?
I've
Or
missed
did I
it as
just
well.
completely
to be fair.
whiff one? Hold on.
To
I'm
be fair,
intrigued.
George Geets
I hadn't
tweets
heard that
a lot,
either.
and only like 50% of his tweets are actually informative. The rest is just like
He shoots
random
a lot of
nonsense.
darts
This
at
is
the
why
That's
we
the
got to
problem,
filter.
right? Every time I see
Seriously.
every time I see his reporting, I'm like, man, this guy, veteran, experience. Like, I'm so impressed. And then I see any of his other tweets, and I'm like, oh, he's a child. He's 21. He's a child. He's still a baby. He's
Forgot about
Twitter
that,
is so
yeah.
shit. That's the yo-yo that I'm on with George is always like great reporting, great informative, and then every time I see a shit post, it's like, oh, can I block this guy? No, I can't. I can't. He's a good person, and he makes good tweets.
He's actually like a really good reporter too. Like it just like
Yeah.
for every like really solid hit, there's another miss.
Dude, how many
somewhere.
times has he tweeted the word Valorant?
Yeah,
And
well,
he still gets impression. Like
True.
that he yoinked from.
Well,
That's
that's
like
just
Adam over
genius
in the
social
CS
media
space.
game though.
Yeah, well, no,
That's
it's
just
is
complete
it
theft.
though?
It's outright theft. Adam Pie Thrower started doing that in the CS space where he would just tweet out the words Counter Strike, and now George just does it in Valorant. And then the CS account just tweeted Counter Strike, and it created a massive Twitter trend. Anyways, Twitter is dumb. Twitter is dumb. It's not the real world. Genuinely, all joking aside, Geedy's is very reliable on his reports. But Yeah, I don't know. That would be very interesting indeed. The Guard in general is starting to be an interesting team. Anytime MCE gets signed to an organization, I'm taking notice just because he's the kind of guy who maximizes value out of the talent that's available to him. And so I am really curious because, right, we have Psalm, who's made some waves. We have Net, who's been bouncing around a lot of those unsigned teams for a while, right? Has been a presence, but we've never really gotten huge waves out of him. And you've got Valen, who people have been very impressed with on Complexity, but Complexity has never really been able to take that next step. So all these pieces now coming together, an experienced coach to put them together, maybe 2 other stars coming in or something like that. This could get to be an interesting roster next year.
I'm looking forward to seeing it because specifically Valen is someone who I have like had my eyes on for quite some time since they joined Complexity. In fact, we talk about how Complexity always struggled to kind of get over the finish line, but bringing Valen on was one of the things that had propelled them so much closer to finally freaking getting to that point. And then I saw he wasn't on Complexity anymore. Obviously, this was just prior to the guard announcement, and I was like, no, what have they done? How could they let him go? What if they he's on the okay, cool, new team. And then I was like, what the hell is this guard? And then I saw and I didn't pay too much attention to it. I was like, all right, they gotta be semi-decent if they've managed to yoink Valen, whatever. Then I saw MCE on it, and I'm like, wait, who are these people? And then I did some research. It took me a while to get to that point, and it's like, oh, this is spicy. So yeah, a lot of dosh going into that one. So hopefully they kind of live up to the investment because it feels like there's a lot going into this team. So there's going to be a lot of expectation.
Yeah. I am very curious to see how it'll go. I will say another G name they could switch to, the Grenadiers. It's a good one. It's a G name.
Ooh,
that'd be good.
Yeah. Gladiators,
fighting
Gorillas,
name.
and Grenadiers. Yeah.
I'm just saying, G fighting
that.
name. I feel like there's probably
it works
more.
better too because like you have Gladiators, like the longer names, right? Guard.
Yeah.
Guard.
Guard.
It's very stagnant in comparison.
Mole cop.
Grenadiers, that's a good one. Somebody DM their marketing
somebody
guy.
Yeah.
Look,
let them know
Stan,
ASAP.
Mr. Cronky, just shoot me a cool mill. We're good. I'll sell you the name. No problem. Just a cool mill. Slide it in. PayPal. I'll hit
Nice
you up.
try.
You think what do you think like PayPal would do if you just got sent $1 million out of nowhere?
They would take a lot of it.
Yeah, how does that transaction work once you hit that size? I don't know how that works.
Press
Anyway,
and
moving on here.
digressing. Name a more iconic duo.
Moving on here. Ohai's out of Complexity. Complexity obviously undergoing some serious changes with Valen leaving as well. I mean, look, this is a Complexity team that's never really lived up to the billing, right? They've been getting to the point where they were competitive in the non-VCT events. That's sort of where they're at. It's like we expect them to see them in the finals of Nerd Street events. We expect to see them in finals of Knights tournaments. We expect to see them competing in that kind of level. But they never quite hit that level. And Ohai is one of the original members. He and AGM, I think, are the only remaining original members. Now it's just down to AGM from that original team that came over. What do we make of Complexity at this point, Paul?
I mean, you still do have AGM and like I think Drake Cruel's on that roster. I'm pretty sure he's still on that roster. So like it's not unreasonable to like shave down some and then try to rebuild off of some stable players. I definitely think those two have had really good performances when we've seen Complexity. Ohai is definitely a good player too. I hope he lands on his feet. Can't wait to see where he goes next. But again, like kind of like what we were saying with 100 Thieves, it's just that, but like a tier down for Complexity. It's not unreasonable to shave off a lot of their team, considering, you know, we've got a while until the next VCT. You get some new blood in here. You try out some of those non-VCT events, and you try to consistently start clapping your way through them, right? Get those first, second places online, and then you feel good going into VCT next year.
Sam?
I just kind of... Yeah, I think about so obviously we had AGM on the show quite some time back, and he was talking about, you know, the struggles of having to like drop players and they're your friends, and you kind of have to have this conversation with them, like, you know, sorry, but for the sake of the team and whatever, I can't imagine it. And I know how close AGM and Ohai were. Yeah. So like immediately that's where my mind goes straight away. I know that Ohai was getting a bit of heat on Reddit, but I mean Reddit is Reddit. And
who doesn't get heat on Reddit?
Yes, honestly. Complexity have needed to make a couple of changes, and losing Valen was not the ideal change. Not that they had too much say in it, but now that that's happened, it's kind of created a bit of a vacuum, and they have to figure out, okay, well, what are we going to stuff in there, you know? And do we make it slightly, and now they've decided to make that vacuum a little bit bigger. Don't look at me in that tone of voice, Mike.
I mean, anytime you use the phrase "decide what to stuff in there," I'm gonna have to raise an eyebrow.
Look,
Okay,
it's
y'all
a
were talking about
Thanksgiving
dicking
thing.
about 10 minutes ago, all right? Can we
It's
just...
a Thanksgiving thing, all right? Thanksgiving's
Thanksgiving
right
is
around
next
the
week.
corner here in America.
Sam's just thinking about
Yeah.
turkey.
Literal
They
stuffing.
definitely
Yeah,
have
here in
Thanksgiving
South Africa.
Africa.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very, very notable holiday in South Africa
Yeah,
is
fun
American
here.
Thanksgiving.
Are holidays not just everywhere? Isn't that the American thing?
And that's the
We're the only
American
country,
way.
right?
It's the American
America
way.
is the world. What?
Ay.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bummer in that sense, right? Where this team, when they first came in, were obviously very close. I mean, you had XP3 on that original roster, you had Calm on that original roster. He didn't stick around too long. But it just hasn't. They haven't been able to hang. And so this is kind of looking like the studs up rebuild, right? You've still got Brock involved in that roster. He's still tied to it. One of their latest pickups before they went for the full ship off. But I am curious to see what kind of swings they take, because Complexity has always kind of seemed a little lukewarm on Valorant. They've never made any big purchases. They never made any big swings for free agents or for players who are under contract to try and buy them out, right? It's always been picking up people who don't have contracts, picking up people who don't have teams, picking up people who haven't really shown anything at the top level yet, right? J. Cruel came over from CS, but like Brock, even Valen, when he first came over, was not like, this is where he sort of made a big name for himself. To then move on to the next project. So it would be, I think it'll be very telling of Complexity's commitment into Valorant who they get for the next two, right? If they bring in some big names, if they bring in some spicy players, and there are a lot of free agents, there are a lot of people who are in transition, then it speaks to a renewed interest and a renewed commitment in. If they're going to, again, try and pick up slightly more unproven talent and maybe get some of them to shine, then maybe they're trying to become a little bit more of an Immortals team where, like Valen, they're going to give talent a chance to shine and then ship them off for Doremi, which is fine. But it's just going to be kind of interesting because, right, an organization like Complexity, you expect to be a premier organization. You expect them to be a top competitor, really, with that name, with that pedigree. And they just haven't been to this point, which it pains me to say because, full bias on the table, I love AGM a lot. He's a great dude. I want the world for him. But it just hasn't happened. What was the comment?
Immortals, but with less success.
Yeah. I mean, Immortals has been pretty meh for a while now too. After their
last that is worse when you're comparing to Immortals.
That's the thing. Like,
that's a rough bar to set. The bar was not high,
true.
and you did not meet it. That's oof.
All right, moving on here. We'll get ourselves out of here. More NA stuff. JC Stanley's coming into the Pioneers. I think it's really exciting. We'll talk about it with the community gaming event, but it's just kind of cool that the Pioneers, with their, again, a studs up rebuild that was kind of forced on them, with Odorous moving on over to V1, they're having some success here, Sam.
That roster is stacked. Have you seen that roster?
Yeah.
Hold up, let me just get it up here. Thief, J-Mo, Critical, J Stanny, and Weeded. Like, when I first saw the results from the showdown.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going.
Well, so just really quick, it's my understanding that like 3 of those players aren't actually signed yet, though. Critical still with BBG, and Thief and Weeded are still free agents. So like,
yeah, I suppose there's a bit of an asterisk on that.
It's a really good roster if they can lock it down in contracts.
Like if you're looking at it in terms of like an isolated system, so just this one tournament. Because at first I was like, AC Pioneers won? What? How? Where? And then I went and I looked at the roster and I was like, okay, now it makes sense that they did so freaking well. But if there's an asterisk on 3 of their players, it does leave a lot of questions. Now, obviously, getting JC Stanny on is already like a amazing step in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, can they lock down the other 2, 3 and make this like an official roster? Because if they stick together and work as a team going forward, I think they're gonna terrify the tier 2 scene.
Oh, and JC Stanny specifically looked really good this weekend. right? Like my mind goes back to that very first map of the grand finals where it was like 13-2 and he got like something over 20 kills in like 13 or 14 rounds as Astra. The dude was just clapping, absolutely clapping Knights, the other team. And Knights are no slouches. The next two maps were a bit more competitive, but like JC Stani already looks really comfortable on this team, assuming the rest of the team actually solidifies a bit. But I think no matter who they get to pair along JC Stani, like this is just like in isolation, it's a really, really good pickup.
So promising results. Now it's time to see how the contract negotiations play out. And it's always, this is one of those weird seasons as a player where I'd imagine from a player perspective, some people are like, yeah, I'd like to, unless I get something better. So maybe just try and drag the contract conversations out until you make sure you're not going to get a little call out from a big team.
Sure. I mean, you know, maybe some of those Pioneers players are talking to guard, right?
or TSM. I mean, TSM's
T1.
looking for a rebuild. FaZe is potentially doing a big rebuild. T1's making some big changes. Like 100 Thieves are making changes. Like there's a lot of open spots,
man.
Options, all it takes is one GM to be like, this guy's the next big thing, and suddenly you're called up to the big leagues, right? So and look, Pioneers, it's really cool what Pioneers are doing. I think they've got a really solid approach to the way they're trying to approach Valorant, and it's their marquee esport, but they are the new kids on the block. They don't have that instant draw of holy shit, I'm playing for FaZe, or holy shit, I'm playing for 100 Lives. You know, they're still making that name. Speaking of some of the bigger names, T1 and 100 Thieves, our next thing. Oh wait, actually no, I'm jumping ahead. We're doing NRG and TSM right now. Hazed, I misread the outline there. Hazed is on NRG now. He moved from TSM. He was cut from TSM, as per him, and is now going to be helming up that NRG squad. And some interesting results for them early on. Not exactly the win they were hoping for, but some decent results in that community gaming event there. What do you make of it, Paul?
First off, I gotta give him shout outs on that beard. That is good. I had not seen Hazed with the beard that like before that image, right?
Though.
You should see it dyed pink. He had it dyed pink for a while, didn't he?
What?
Yeah. Did he? Oh man.
I think he.
I need to keep up with Hazed.
His stream. Hold on.
Okay, sure. Well, you're finding that. I still think NRG looked better though, right? Like even though they didn't like come out and just immediately blow away the entire tournament, they looked better. I think back, what was it? I was able to only catch like one NRG match. I think it was when they played like Elysium. It was Sean Garris who said like they just look so much more decisive and they look like they know what they're doing compared to other NRG iterations, which like kind of just flopped around the map a lot. And it's no surprise, like Hazed coming in, picking up a lot of that calling, presumably, that NRG are able to actually play as a team and decide to play Valorant once they load into a map. So I'm excited for the trajectory of NRG. I'm not sure they're going to be like hanging out with like, you know, Envy or Sentinels or anything, but they're definitely going to be better than the mid-tier team they were before Hazed.
This is the thing, like a team is a lot of moving parts, and like it's not enough to just have 5 fraggers. I mean, we've seen teams like that where everyone is like a star fragger and they never actually get anywhere because you just have pretty much you only have one of the parts in multitude. You need all of the parts, you know. You need players who are willing to step back and be supportive. You need a player who's going to step up and take the lead role without having 4 other people yelling their opinion on the matter mid-game. So it's all these different parts that need to come together. So when you look at NRG's lineup, I mean, they've got some really solid players on there, and they always have. But it's that small nuance of what each of the parts is doing in the system to make it work. And clearly bringing Hazed on is moving them in a better direction. No, okay, like we said, they're not up there with the Sentinels, the NBs, the Cloud9s, but they're improving. And that's probably, I mean, that is the best first step that you could possibly have. Now you experiment with it a little bit. We've got about 2 months of off season left, give or take. I'm not sure. I think VCT starts like end of Jan or somewhere there. So there's a little bit of time to still kind of get used to it. There might be a couple more tournaments in between now and then that some teams will still be able to participate in, particularly a team like NRG, because I don't think that they have that like ban thing where like you can't play in certain tournaments or whatever. So there's a lot of time to feel into the roster a little bit more. And I've got high hopes here. I think that getting Hazed in might just be the missing piece that they've needed.
I do find it a little interesting. I mean, it's no longer even, right? It was NRG. Chet went from NRG to TSM. Now he's on Envy because he's just playing musical chairs with a coaching role. But Hayes then does the reverse pipeline. The veteran IGL is like, all right, I'll come back to NRG to fill that void. They've got Josh RT in the coaching. But I mean, this is an interesting composition, right? You've got Som, EU, and Tex to bring sort of that youth and firepower. You've got Android, who's a much more experienced player, has been around for a while, still has a ton of firepower, but has a little bit more veterancy. Was a competitor to Hayes for a long time, so there's presumably some degree of familiarity there. I know he's good friends with Som as well, so there's chemistry that you're presumably bringing in. They duo together all the time. So yeah, this will be an interesting team to watch. It's an interesting approach for NRG because for a long time it felt like they were just trying to bring up the next cracked aimer every time, right?
Sure.
It's like, who's NRG's new signing? This guy played really well at a tournament last week. He's on NRG now. Now it's a different approach. It's like going, okay, we need some leadership, we need some veterancy. Let's see how it goes. So yeah, I'm here for it. I like it. I'm into it. Moving on, because I'm realizing we're now half an hour in, so we need to start blowing through some stuff.
Jeez.
This is big news. T1's apparently looking to sign Steel from 100 Thieves because they just love those iBuy Power players from back in the day. I mean, literally, like T1's it's a T1 potential roster signings. iBuy Power roster. Like, seriously, come on, guys. Come on.
I mean, they've yeeted some of them in the interim, so.
Yeah, I mean, they're churning through that whole roster, right? They
like
got rid of
cycling.
Brax, they got rid of AZK. They've still got Skedoodle on there. They just need to. Oh, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, where's T1 been, man? We haven't seen him since they literally have not played in a match since I think it's July.
They've
Yeah,
been sorting out their roster,
July. Right? Yeah.
Oh, and making an academy team, of course.
Though. But so slowly that they've been subbing out their roster, right? I mean, I think this would be a really interesting move for Steel as an individual and like T1. Like, maybe this can bring like some veterancy to a revitalized T1 roster, but it's not like Steel is going to be cheap. T1, they have not really returned on their investment in Valorant whatsoever. So, like, how much are they going to like try to sink further in based on the very I hesitate to even call it mediocre, the honestly really poor results that they got earlier this year. It'd be an interesting move. I think this is certainly more risky for Steel than it is for T1. I mean, Steel's a great player. I think he could end up on a lot of really good rosters.
Yeah. Sam, any thoughts?
I feel like maybe T1 got to a stage in the year where they were like, well, there's probably no way in hell we're making champs anyway, so let's take a step back and, gotta focus on me, right? I think that's kind of where they were at with their roster. And none of the changes that they've made up to now have really sparked too much excitement in anyone. This is probably the most exciting potential move to come from this team, and while it's probably going to suck a little bit for 100 Thieves, it's probably a decent move for T1, but I feel like T1 have also just been a little all over the place. I mean, I kind of mentioned about how they have that academy roster, and then they lost who was ANS who came over, and I don't think he was expecting to be on the academy roster. That he was on the academy roster, he was like, nah, stuff this, I'm going back to Owl. So like T1 has just been really messy on a whole bunch of different levels, and honestly my faith in them is non-existent at this point. Like, until they actually until they come out and say, this is our next VCT, basically. These are our 5 players. This is our coach. Then I'm going to sit up and take notice and be like, all right, cool, show me what you got. But until then, I'm kind of over this T1 team.
I mean, I think 100. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
I was just going to say, and I have to wonder if the on-sun sniper thing was like literally like they signed him and then they decided, hey, we're not really going to play our main team anymore. Do you still want to play on the academy team? And he's just like, well, I guess.
No.
And then, just went back to Overwatch. Yeah, that's all I had to say.
I mean, if you're jumping on that sinking ship, you're really desperate. But I mean, the thing about T1 is I feel like T1's just been, they came into the year looking like a hot sports car, and then it turned out that the whole chassis was rusted through, and they've just had wheels falling off ever since, right? It feels like it's downward trajectory. So this is an interesting potential move because I don't think you have Steel in a team unless it's his team. Based on what I know of Steele, based on what I know of his leadership style, based on what I've heard about the way he is within a team in terms of comms and like the way he is vocal, I think that if T1 sign Steele, bring Steele into the organization, they're giving him the reins to a certain degree. I think Curry's likely stepping back from IGLing, which I think is fine. I think Curry stepped up out of necessity. I don't think that's a big problem. But I am curious to see how it would interact and how things would go, right? And whether there'd be clashes with the coach. I think I've made it pretty clear that I haven't been the wildest fan of what David Denise brought to this roster or done with this roster. But we'll see. I'm sure 100 Thieves would be happy to grab the bag for a player they benched. So we'll see if they can get that buyout signed. But moving on, because we got to keep moving on. Here's the rumor from George Giedens. Here's another one for 100 Thieves. Nitro coming back to CS. Please, God, let it happen.
No,
please give us something.
We need him.
Give us another one.
We need him in Valorant, please.
I feel like someone just went up to the pipeline. I feel like someone went to the pipeline and just turned the lever to reverse the flow, and we're starting to get people back. And I love it. Give them back.
Which is surprising to me because NACS is still dead. So why?
The winds are changing.
Like, I mean, you talk about going back to sinking ships, right? Like
CS?
the NA ship is sunk.
The CS just broke the viewership measure for a major 2 times over without drops in viewership. 2.5 million people tuned into the last major. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. But lands are coming back, and there will be NA events. The winds are changing. Opportunities are going to start to come in over the next year, and I'm just saying there will be some backflow. There will be some backflow coming back in. This one's unconfirmed, so we won't spend too much time on it, but it is a very interesting one to have in your mind. Now let's blow through EU, because holy cow, we're taking way too much time here. That's my fault.
Every time. The next time you put together the show list, I'm going to make sure EU is on top so that we take all of our time through EU, and then we blow through NA.
No one cares about EU, though. All right, Pith is officially out of G2. This was happening for a long time, but now he's a free agent, so he's been benched a while. It's not really that interesting, I don't think. So we'll move on. This one's more interesting for G2, and I'm sure you have a lot to say about it, Sam. What happened here? Anya seemed like was a great piece for the Gozen roster. Benched, new player in, Seal, and then Carcass comes in as a coach. What do you make of this, Sam?
So I don't know terribly much about Carcass. I'm probably sure. I'm sure you probably know a little bit more about him than I.
Never heard of him.
No, I thought he was like a CS guy. Okay, fair enough.
Never heard of him.
So Seal comes from the old Goose House roster, and they kind of left Goose House, and she's actually a really good player. I remember watching her quite a bit during, throughout the year from January up to, when Game Changer started in September. And she's one of these players that has shown a lot of promise. So it's unsurprising that if they were going to swap someone, that they would bring her onto the roster. The big question mark for a lot of people was, why the hell did they drop Anya? Because she put G2 in her backpack for a lot of those games and was like, come on, losers, we're going to finals, or as close as damn as we can get. And she's a phenomenal player. What I've heard around the rumor mill is that it has to do with like attitude, right? In-game attitude, toxicity, that kind of vibe, which for an org like G2 is fucking impressive. How toxic do you have to be to get benched from G2? All right, they had Ardis, for God's sake.
Here's the thing, though. Based on what I know of that roster, not acknowledging G2 as an organization, it's that roster from back in the CS days. A lot of them had been together for a while and been competing for a while, and they've been very much a unit that has moved from team to team. So I would guess that if someone gets cut for an attitude issue or people don't like playing with them, it's more that the players decided they didn't want to play with her anymore. And decided to make the move that way. Yeah. That would be my suspicion. Now, whether it's justified or not, I don't know. Pretty impossible to know without being in the comms. But certainly an interesting decision. See if it comes back to bite them. If Anya gets signed somewhere else, and
I mean, they're
pops
doing
off.
well at the moment. We're obviously going to talk about that later, but yeah, it seems to be going all right.
All right, moving on. Got to roll here. Solo, this one's a big one. Solo retired from competing. He's been competing for decades. Back in CS 1.6, Solo was the hype dude out of Korea. It's nuts that he's finishing this 20-year FPS career. I mean,
That's wild.
absolutely insane. Legend of the genre. Now he's going to be coaching.
I mean, he had to have been the longest experienced player in Valorant, right? In terms of just like competitive length,
Well,
or at least
No,
up there, right?
So there were a
20
few
years
guys-
is such a long time.
Yeah, no. So yeah, I mean, he's definitely one of the longest tenured guys. But there were a few guys in that in the Korean scene who have been retiring and moving
Okay.
into coaching who
Yeah.
have
Okay,
been playing
for
since
sure.
1.6. Really.
Well, and it's got to happen eventually. Everybody makes a lot of the players make the move to coaching eventually, right? And I'm like low key, like I don't want to say excited because I'm gonna miss seeing him as a player. The dude was insane, but also I hope he ends up on like a good team with like a good like set of players, and then maybe we can start to see some more teams from Korea that look consistently competitive, right? Like I feel like Korea always has vision strikers, and then every other like the other team always changes. Like when we go to a tournament, right? Like an international one, whoever's winning in Korea varies day to day outside of vision strikers. So I hope we can maybe get him on a team with some good players. He coaches it, gives them all the rigmarole they need, and we can start getting a little bit more consistency toward the top of Korea.
Sam?
What Paul said. I mean, yeah, basically what
Cool.
Paul said.
Yeah, no, it would be
Nice.
interesting to see. It's basically what Glow did in Vision Strikers, right? Is the same transition.
Sure.
I think they were teammates way back in the day, as well. It's just it's cool to see legends of the game. People that like the kids growing up now watch their frag movies when they were like 10. It's just wild. So that transition to coaching is a really interesting one, and we'll see how it goes. Moving on, Guild. Yassine and Bonkar out. Draken out
Breaks my
again,
heart.
but plus Draken minus Draken is just constant. So yeah, man. All right, this is right at the end of the last month. You're the number one Guild fan girl, Sam. So hit us with the knowledge.
This is depressing. So obviously they came from the old Bonk roster at the beginning of last year, and Yassine and Bonkar, they have now decided, it seems they weren't actually dropped, they decided to leave Guild, and they're looking for other opportunities, which to an extent I can understand, because again, Guild has been another team that's always had that kind of always the bridesmaid, never the bride situation going on. They would get knocked out of tournaments early, but most of the time it's because they would come up against really big teams super early on, and so they would get kind of smacked out, and eventually they did actually start to do really well. They were doing really well in tournaments leading up to Berlin, and it looked like they were possibly going to like just eke over, maybe so close but so far, and they just weren't able to kind of clinch any of those first place spots. Obviously they didn't make it to champions, and so I think that all of the work throughout the year and all of those circumstances coming together probably weighed pretty heavily on these players, knowing that they'd come so close and just could not get there. Now is the perfect time to be looking for a new team, because much like with NA, EU is a bit of a roster shuffle mayhem. You got teams that are actively looking for new players to potentially change up some of their players here and there. So I think that if they are going to be looking for a new team, now is probably the time to do it, right before the next season starts. But are they going to be able to? That's going to be tough, because also with a lot of holes opening up, it also means that there are a lot of strong free agents that are now coming into the mix. So it is going to be a little bit of a bloodbath to try and get yourself onto one of those top teams. And yeah, for me, it's really sad to see them leave that kind of OG roster. I felt like Guild had a lot of promise and they just couldn't live up to it.
Well, and it'll be especially hard for them to find opportunities, like considering how many players are in the pool right now, because they explicitly want to get them together, right? Which I think is super cool. I love it when players like stick together and they're like, hey, we have really good synergy. You get twice your bang for your buck by picking both of us up. But also it makes it more difficult because, it's not, you can't just slot one of them onto a role for a team that's already mostly built. You need a team that is going through a lot of rebuilds. And then, then you ask the further question, oh, well, if this is the team they're joining is going through a lot of rebuilds, is it even going to be a good team, or who else is the talent on it that is being picked up? So it adds a lot of variables. I best of luck to them. I've really liked always watching Yassine Bonker play.
Crazy good, yeah.
I'm just gonna put this out there. I have this weird suspicion that they've misread the room, and that they're not going to be able to get a better opportunity than Guild, especially as a duo. Here, I don't know what the contracts are like for Guild, but it was an organization that came in with some serious investment. I would wager they were paying at least decent salaries. NIP leaving the scene is sort of one of those like troubling first little indicators, where it's like NIP is a storied, historic EU organization. If they went, we don't really want to invest our money here, we're going to move over to Brazil.
They also do have a lot of teams in Brazil, though, don't they?
They have one.
That's
they have a Rainbow Six.
They have like a
decided to build on it.
champion-winning R6
Oh, okay.
team. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah.
So now they've built up a huge fan base, and we know what the Brazilian fans are like. So, like, it makes sense. It's not like they just decided, they didn't throw a dot on a map and go, we're going to move there.
Skipping down.
No, I agree with that, but I'm just saying it's one of those read of the room type of situations where it's like, our team's going to be splashing a ton of cash in Valorant in EU right now, who don't already have pretty solid rosters, because it's not like none of the champs teams are going to be making moves. I don't think. I can't see Fnatic making a move. I can't see Liquid making a move at this point. Maybe if CNED goes to tax prison for his bit scandal, Ascend will make a move. But otherwise, I really don't expect Ascend to be making much of a move. And like who else are you looking for? Like BDS, or are you looking for, where are you looking to be picked up? Are you looking at FPX? Are you looking at where are you looking to go?
Maybe
that's going to be an
FPX.
upgrade from Guild. I'm just not sure, right? I'm not sure where the obvious upgrade is going to be, and I don't know. I think it'll be interesting to see where they wind up, but I'm worried that they're going to wind up in a situation where they're kind of left swinging in the wind and maybe looking back at where they'd come from and saying, hey, can we do what Draken did and come back? But we'll see. We'll see. It is a shame this team hasn't had a little more success because their content's hype. That announcement video where they had the guys on the long jump was hilarious.
That was so
It was
funny.
so good.
That's like iconic early Valorant moments. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, moving on here. The Misfits are apparently maybe getting involved in Valorant, maybe. And apparently they're going to sign 24 Haven. So, whoa, what do we make of this one? This one surprised me a little bit. A little bit out of left field, I would say.
I mean, obviously, so most people should know the Misfits organization. I think the big surprise is that if they enter Valorant, they're entering with a women's team, which is amazing for the women's scene, 100%. But no one really expects an org to start their journey with a female team. I think it's great. I think 24 Haven are super deserving. They've got some phenomenal players on there. They've been performing really, really well, getting pretty good placements. So it's really exciting for them, and it's great, obviously, to get more org support in the scene. But yeah, Misfits was definitely on my list of orgs that I was waiting to get involved in Valorant. Misfits wasn't really high up there, so kind of out of left field, but I'm here for it.
I just think it's hilarious that Chloe Gaming is going to be signed to an actual team and going to have to give up the Chloe Gaming.
She was part of Andbox, so
she was social media for Andbox. That is very different from being a player. She was a social media person for Andbox.
I thought she was a content creator. Okay,
I think that's what they had on the transfer thing, but I'm pretty sure she did social media for them. I'm 95% sure that's what she was doing. So it's just hilarious to me that she had to leave that job because she's getting signed to an actual roster. Esports, man. Everybody does everything. It's wild.
Esports is an anime.
Esports is, in fact, an anime at all times. All right. Yep. That's an interesting one. We'll see if that does come to pass. Moving on in, because time. NIP, they're out of EMEA. We kind of already talked about this.
Yeah, we touched on this.
Yeah, a little bit.
They're bumping off to Brazil. Didn't we talk about this?
Big sad for the players.
No, we just talked about it in our group. Yeah, we didn't have a show after this news dropped. Forgot about that. I think we had a show. Didn't we have a show right when the
Weekly.
rumor started? I swear we talked
It
about
might
this.
have been.
It
There was
might
a
have been when
rumor
the
that
rumor
Nip
started.
was pulling out of like Valorant, so it might have been
Yeah.
around there. But
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's
I
right.
swear we talked about this on the show. But anyways, they're going to Brazil.
Yeah.
Moving on here. Ascend has lost their analyst right before champs. Do we know anything about what's going on here? Sam?
yes, and I can't
That's
tell
scoop.
you.
Oh, okay. Well,
So,
never mind then.
so Leica left for personal reasons. I believe they've had someone working with them for the last little bit and kind of into champs. So they haven't been, in a like up shit creek without a paddle, as it were. They do actually have someone kind of helping them out leading up to champs. If that is going to become like official and if that's all going to become like a thing, I don't know. But it is nice to at least know that they haven't been kind of floundering, waiting to see if they actually get someone to help them. Because
So-
of course this is champs. It's like the biggest event in the Valorant ever.
Sure.
So instead, they're just doing the NV Classic, stringing along a coach analyst, pulling a mics.
God, I hope not.
Oh,
God,
you
I
get a
hope
contract
not.
after champs. You get a contract
Oh,
after
poor
champs. I
Mike.
swear. Just
Aw.
follow this
They're
follow
going
this trail of candy to the gingerbread house. I promise we'll sign you. Remember, folks, if it's not on paper that has been signed, don't trust an esports
Jesus.
org. Never trust
my
someone in a
God.
business transaction
Yep.
unless you have guarantees. Don't take their word for it. A trial period should not last more than like a month at most.
6 month trial.
There's my hot take. Into the events. We are gonna have
Hey.
to do this.
with our last
Game
9 minutes.
changers.
We're going
Game
over time.
changers.
I mean, it is what it
EMEA
is.
3. Sam, give us the scoop
Yeah.
here. Reporter on the ground for the EU women's scene.
This has actually been a pretty exciting one. So, for the most part, the top 4 teams, there were 2 surprises in the top 4 teams. The first one is Smara CIS. They have been kind of nipping at the heels of a lot of these teams for quite some time, but they hadn't actually managed to break into like that top 4 or top 8 area. Now they've actually managed to get in. I will say that their bracket was a little bit easier than some of the other ones. I'm sorry, but I'm not saying that it was easy, right? There are some really good teams, particularly Footballers is actually a pretty damn good team. So I don't see them getting much further. They're going to get smacked down into the lower bracket tomorrow when they face Guild. But it's really impressive for them to have made it this far. The other team, which is not really a surprise, but it's pretty damn cool to see Chatband have made it to the semifinals. Now we see that G2 actually beat 10 Star. It's not the first time that G2 has beat 10 Star, so nobody get too excited because this happened in the previous game changes and then 10 Star just came in and smacked them around and won the whole damn thing. But Chatband have been looking a lot better. And the thing about Chatband is that they had to replace like 2 or 3 of their players very last minute. Like as soon as GC2 ended, 2 of their players, Mary and Spadoka, were just like, all right, cool, we're not playing anymore. We've got to focus on IRL stuff. And so they had to like scramble to get 2 new players. And despite that, they're still doing exceptionally freaking well. This is an unsigned team, by the way, like top 10 female team in the world. And they're unsigned. Can we like do misfits? Anyway. And then of course there's G2 Gozen, who just had to change up one of their players that have made it up into the semifinals. So they've been doing exceptionally well. Apart from that, everything is kind of to be expected, right? Once we get to this point, this is where all hell can break loose. It was actually Tombas made a tweet about it, and he's like, the fact that the top 4 to 6 teams are in such flux in EMEA just really goes to show the depth of talent that we have right now in the scene. Okay, yes, 10 Star have been smacking everyone around for the last 2 GCs, but as much as I'm a huge 10 Star fan, this could be the series where some serious shenanigans happen. And I'm not just saying that because I've told them that if they win, I'll redo John 10 Star's victory dance, which is it's terrible. It's oof. It's really bad.
All right.
I don't want to do it.
Well, that has been our quick recap of Game Changers EMEA 3. It's still ongoing, so tune in, watch the games, and we'll talk about it more once it's a completed event.
Official
I'm
broadcast starts tomorrow, just so everybody's aware. We're starting
Sick.
with the semifinals, so do come check that out. Yeah.
Heck
2
yeah, go
extra
watch.
broadcast days. Yeah.
Nice.
Very nice. Moving on. Community Gaming Valorant Elite Showdown happened. Nice little tournament here to see some of the teams that, I mean, it's sub top and even I'd say sub top, but you know, you're getting a sense for some of these rosters. Pioneers rolling on through that is encouraging. Pittsburgh Knights looking kind of good as well. EG still kind of looking stinky.
Yeah.
They just
EG makes me so sad,
roster,
dude.
man.
EG makes me so sad because they're such good players. I like Boostio and Roka so much. But every time I tune in for an EG game, it feels like if Boostio and Roka aren't taking over an individual round, EG just doesn't exist. They just don't do anything on a map, on a round, whatever you have it. Like it needs to be Boostio and Roka popping off, and it's not like the rest. It's not like they're building the team around like enabling those two players very well. They just let them do whatever a lot of the time, and sometimes it works because they're both really good players, and more often it doesn't work because they're going up against a lot of other good players who have support from their team in terms of like utility or trades, whatever. Right? EG is so frustrating to watch.
Dude, dropping Claudia and Temperature just had the biggest question marks over their heads for me from that day on. Okay, Claudia went over to one of the all women's teams and she's, you know, getting decent success there with CLG. But like for EG to have been like, all right, we are no longer going to keep Claudia, who was with it, man. She was trading blows with some of these tier 2 teams. She was doing exceptionally well, and Temperature as well. Temperature, in fact, was one of the players that impressed me the most when this roster formed. And then, of course, he was on loan to Gen G, and then Gen G were like, well, thanks, buddy. And now he's back to being inactive on EG. And so he's just kind of floating around at the moment. And it's just depressing because they had they had so many good resources and options and possibilities, and it feels like they just made all the decisions.
Well, moving on in, we're going to slide on through here. Again, we already talked about the Pioneers roster, but super exciting that they did win that. That's pretty dang cool. Let's talk about the Winter Champs watch. Winter Champs Open 5 happened. We got a little recap video. Should we cue up the recap video? Roll the tape. Roll the tape. Roll the clip. Roll it. Ooh. I don't know if they can still hear us, but I like this intro.
Now it's Ghost. Have to try and retake the site. No way. Nismo with the perfect timing. I mean, we are just getting a game of timing. And here comes the timing on the backstab. Oh, no better way. It's poetic here. The backstab from the left clips up close and personal. Gonna find one. Gonna find the next. Koala forced the dash away. It's all starting to come crumbling down here on the defense of Caloretta, trying to hold on, but only for a second. A Sacred just starts to mow them down themselves. The Sova from heaven, able to find one. Koala finds the next. Bob will trade it back, make it. Nice. 2. Bob still alive, will back away. And the Hunter's Fury is online. Needs to send the shots and has to do it quickly. Not only finds a frag, but another tag. And Crunchy on the flank to clutch the round. Gun battles for Caloretta to try and open things up. And I mean, just the A side hasn't been safe. Ryan to find the next, but Sacred is there. Pick up one more. Put things back in favor. Might get the jump on to here. Inside the drone. He's gonna beautiful down. Sacred doing it again. A 4K in the round. And it's all up to 1. Here for Ghost Gaming. A lockdown. The plant. Oh my goodness. Chase has to try and do it. Not expecting. The ace comes through and Caloretta get it done.
Sageless composition. They won't be able to Sage wall themselves for a defuse ever. But with starts like this, I doubt they're gonna need to.
Yeah, nope. They don't worry about the Sage utility. They're trying to get these dual assaults online, and Nismo with another. Okay, Koala. Okay, Koala.
Beautiful.
Okay, Koala line.
And isolate this first 1v1. Did you see the jiggle from Critical? I think he did. He's holding that angle really hard. Knows where one is, and the right click goes wide. Only 2 knives land, and Wing gets away with 10 HP.
With 30 seconds on the clock, and everybody's still alive. Oh, Koala New picks up on Holy. Pops the blades, now looking for more. Here comes the jet diff. Round 19. The op shot's still going to go wide. The Classic pulled out. Ryan inside the Nebula. Smoke picks up 1, picks up 2. Nismo to find another. It's a Ryan Nismo sandwich. Okay, interesting.
Good trade.
Yeah, it was Dizzy finding that kill onto Ryan, and Bob actually going to fall to Chase, who hops onto the spike for a second. Now trying to get the peek and Chase.
Cosmic Divide's immediately going to go up here, although they're running straight into the Odin.
Ooh, Hunter Shuri used. That means Frosty, I mean, just has free reign with that lockdown here on the retake because Win no longer has that ban. Gonna
Oh
find a kill
my.
across. Gonna find the next. The Blades are online. Critical just mows them down, and there it is. A flawless round to close us out. Knights get it done in 2-0 fashion, and they're your week 5 winners.
All right. Sick graphics. Love the transitions. Love the theming.
Honestly,
We're
give the
back.
graphic designer a raise.
Yeah, really. All right, Paul, I'll let you take this one. Knights shoot to the top of the standings. What were your key highlights here?
I mean, Knights obviously looking really good, right? That's the key highlight. They're still trying to figure out who their Sova player is. I mean, they got second in the CG tournament, right? But that was with Governor as their Sova, and then here they're actually playing with Critical, who was on Pioneers that beat them, and is still on BBG as a content creator. So I'm not sure what's going on with the Critical, and Knights still need to lock down their Sova. But in general, they're just looking really solid. I was actually pretty impressed by Ghost Gaming. I did not have the highest of high hopes for them. I knew that they were based on like the teams we had coming into this top 16. They were going to be one of the better teams, but they looked better than I thought. My one concern for them is that when they loaded into like 5 out of the 6 maps that we saw them play yesterday, because we just followed Ghost Gaming through the whole bracket, they felt inconsistent. Like half to half. Like they would come out on defense or something and just not do anything. And then they would move to their attacking side and look like a totally different team. And that happened like a lot. That happened a lot. And they would also have a lot of like these weird passive attacks. But in general, I still think Ghost Gaming looked better than I expected. Koala Noob, his op was absolutely nasty throughout the day. And Hwin actually really surprised me. Hwin, I didn't think has
Hwin
had
surprised
like phenomenal. Well, to a degree, right? Because since Hwin's moved on to like the Sova, because he's moved on to this lineup, I think he's been a little bit more quiet, right, compared to when he was on Jet. But yesterday he was disgustingly clutch. Just an absolute powerhouse, and I really liked it. A couple of new faces that I personally wasn't aware of, right? A lot of the time recently I've been more in the collegiate scene than the amateur-ish, semi-pro-ish scene, whatever you want to call, hanging around in NSG. But I was impressed by Radiance. They managed to take a map off Knights. They even beat Dark Zero. Great run through the bracket for them. Kawareta came out of nowhere, and although like they did get 2-0'd, and you can argue that their bracket was a little bit easier than some of the other teams. When they played Ghost Gaming, it was like 13-10, 13-11. So both the maps were pretty close. So I'm excited for a lot of these teams we have hanging around in the top 16.
Yeah, it's always cool to see new names start to come through. Stuff Evil Geniuses in the first round. That's like a rite of passage for teams, it seems, right now. Just dunking on that roster. And moving on in.
God.
So we'll continue the Winter Champs watch as things go along, as we get teams locked into spots here, folks. But that is going to wrap up our episode for today of Press Forward to Defuse. If you don't already follow our guest at Paulsable on the Twitters, you should follow him. Clearly, casting some tournaments.
Next follower is my 600th follower.
Off you go then.
Oh,
next follower is number
you,
600.
Right?
Uh-huh.
This is where I find out
you?
if I do actually follow. I don't. Aha! Oh, but
There it is.
600.
He sniped the 601. He sniped
I'm
it.
601.
There we go.
I'm 601
really?
coming on in here.
That'll
No, but definitely do give him a follow, and we'll see you next week at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll be doing this consistently
Esports
now.
Meta
Our
Podcast.
hiatus is over. Oh yes, I'm supposed to plug something. Plugging the esports.
Plug two
Okay, so first
things.
of all, there's a nice article on nerdstreetgamers.com with some thoughts from pro players on Chamber. We didn't really get a chance to talk about Chamber. There's a lot to talk about. We'll maybe talk about them next week.
Oh yeah.
And then the esports meta podcast is back. Now Jess is taking the helm on that one, and her first episode is up with Sam. So you should go ahead and check that out if you want to hear more from Sam, because of course, why wouldn't you? Also, sneak peek. There's another episode coming out on Friday. That one's with Zekin, sitting down with Zekin. So you'll want to listen to that. You'll want to give it a listen. You can find that wherever podcasts are posted, Spotify, what have you, also on the nerdstreetgamers.com page. So check that out. And we'll see you next week. Goodbye, everyone.